today. Excited to, we're recording this presentation, so if you're watching this at a later time, thanks so much for taking the time to be present with us during CIEE's College Prep Fair this week. Exciting to see the amount of excitement about students interested in exploring what the next steps might be for them after they're finishing high school, and even some students who are starting this search early on in high school. Either way, there's no bad time to do it. So for this presentation specifically, we're going to be talking about alumni stories and expert insights. We have an amazing panel of presenters, myself included, but they're here to talk to you from experience about the gap year programs, gap years in general, what they are, as well as hearing from an alumni from one of our programs to talk a bit about their experience and what made them enjoy it. So like I said, we have people here to talk to you today. So it's kind of nice to know who they are, what their roles in relation to CIEE or externally are. So for me, my name is Adam Chilliwatt. I'm an enrollment coordinator at CIEE for our first year abroad and gap year department. Basically, my role is to work with any students on the East Coast, South Carolina up from start to finish when they start an application to when they're on the plane going on our programs for our post-high school program. And Jane?
I was actually really excited for you to introduce me, Adam. I was just going to let you run with it.
I could wing it.
No, I'm Jane Soroyan. I am the co-founder of J2 Guides, which is a gap year consulting service. I'm an accredited gap year consultant. I was just speaking at a gap year fair out in Seattle, actually, Kelly, 2 weeks ago. And yeah, J2 Guides is sort of the culmination of 30 years of work that I've done in this amazing field of experiential and gap year education. So I'll be giving a little bit of a 30,000-foot view perspective and some strategies on how to gap year plan.
Hi, my name's Jinwei, and I'm a gap year student, a high school gap year student. I enrolled in CIEE's Kyoto Fall program last year, and yeah, I'm the alumni of CIEE, and yeah.
Awesome. And we're actually going to go right back to Chinwei to hear about a bit of her experience with CIEE, being a recent student on our programs. I think she has kind of the best insight of what these programs are like, how they run, as well as getting to talk a bit about what she enjoyed, as well as maybe, her experience overall.
Yeah, so this is my slide, and this is actually all that happened in 3 months. And there's so many other photos that I could have included, but I think CIEE's experience was really great. I think it really meant like the space and the people that brought me at such a different place for the 3 months. So basically over the 3 months, we were studying Japanese. We had to go to school. There was the program that we had to stick to. There was the morning classes, 3 or 4 hours of intensive Japanese. And then we were off to either explore or to study more on our own. And I think that freedom really just gave everyone this kind of empowerment to do something that they're passionate in. And for me and my friend, it was learning Japanese. So we traveled around and we spoke Japanese to more locals, and we got to know different people's go-to spaces and all the secret places in Kyoto that was hidden. And I think that, yeah, it was a beautiful experience that I could never imagine even trying to replace it. I was really thankful for being placed in a really nice host family who loved me really well, and they couldn't speak any English at all, so it was really hard for the first month or so because I can't speak any Japanese. But I think seeing their enthusiasm to learn and to host me gave me the enthusiasm to actually learn fluent Japanese just to speak with them. And they would include me in their activities. I would go to church with them, and then they were kind enough to bring me to Okinawa and Gifu as well, which was completely on their own accords. And yeah, there was just so many things that happened, that friendships were made, and it's those kind of like once in a lifetime kind of trips that you'll never forget, especially when you're at your peak at 18 or 19. So these are just a few photos that I could spend and witness in real life, all while having a whole year experience, living abroad, doing things alone, experiencing life while having people to keep me in check, and also people who cared about me. Like CIEE itself, we had a lot of programs to kind of center ourselves in. After a busy 2 weeks, we had time to gather again, to eat a meal together. And it really felt like we were on a school trip, but this is like an 18-year-old edition where we get to do also what we want. So yeah, I think the program is just really great in a lot of areas. Um, yeah, and yeah, that's all I've got to say. It was one of my best memories for sure.
Thanks, Shinwei. And I think Shinwei was one of my favorite students that I worked with because she was so emphatic about going on this program. And so hearing your perspective of what it was like after the fact, it's not often that I get to hear from my students personally that I work with through the process of, you're excited to go, but how was it? So seeing all these pictures and seeing you talk so emphatically about the program is great. I think one question I would have, at least that I can think of, is what advice would you have for students that are looking to do this program? What are some things that are key takeaways that you were like, oh, I wish I would have known this, or this is really good to know, or this is a good expectation to set for any student that's looking to do a gap year program?
I think to expect the unexpected, to be open and to really put yourself out there. It's 3 months that you're investing into, and you're never going to get those 3 months back. So you might as well make the most out of it and do things and say yes to things that you never thought you would imagine to. I mean, no, don't do drugs, but like if people gave you the opportunity to go on a trip or to do a public speaking in Japanese that you've never done before, or to go out selling things and like maybe making a new friend on the way, or it's just so many opportunities out there that you don't have at school. And the more you say yes, the more connections you make, the more memories you'll have. Yeah.
That's awesome. And now that you're like back home, now that you've finished the program and you've done the 3 months, what are like some benefits that you've seen? Like now that you're like, okay, I went on this experience, now I finished it. Like, wow, this is a way that I've grown as a person, or this is like something that I feel much more confident doing now. Is there anything that like sticks out since you've been back home in the past couple months?
There's actually two, but it's very personal in my growth. One is that I come from a very multicultural country. And so speaking more than one language is very normal, but I couldn't do that. I'm monolingual. So, but I went to Kyoto and I was with Americans who are all of us are monolingual. All of us were pushing ourselves to be bilingual at that point. And when I came back, it helped me really develop a listening ear for developing languages. Like all of a sudden I could pick things up now. So that was like a huge pivotal change in terms of my cultural side. But in terms of personal growth, I think being surrounded by such great people in that time, like I was infused with them, it allowed me to open up a lot easier, to trust people more. And since coming back, like I've noticed that change, that I'm more open, I'm more able to talk to people, to strangers. I'm able to have a random conversation and then continue that conversation for a very long period of time. So I think the social skill really went up, and there was that self-confidence as well.
That's awesome. And I know I don't want to like step over your time because I know for Chinwei, you're on the way to the airport to travel soon. But do you have another second or two if Kelly has any questions about your experience? Cool, great. Kelly, is there anything, I know you have like the show to yourself. Do you have any specific questions you'd like to ask Chinwei about her experience?
I do, and thank you. I feel like so honored that I have this VIP experience here. So Chinwei, you correct me, you did a semester or did you do the full academic year?
I did a semester.
Okay, so tell me what academically then, after having done a semester, did you enroll in a university to then do a spring admit? What are your plans beyond the gap year? And do you feel like it's easy, you're easily able to make that transition? And I asked this question because I've heard that some colleges and universities frown on the gap year experience, that they sometimes don't want to consider candidates that do this. So I'm just interested to hear your perspective on how you're able to then make the leap from your gap year experience into higher education, or whatever that next step is. I mean, maybe you're interested in doing something different. It's not a 2-year or 4-year institution. So tell me, about where you go after this experience.
So yeah, I'll be taking university after this. And for me, the transition was actually much easier taking a gap year. I think I was overwhelmed in high school, and I really needed that break. More of a personal kind of breather, and like the headspace has brought me a lot of clarity to wanting to do university now, the coming years. So yes, I have also processed that universities might frown upon gap years, but I think it's what you do and what you get out of it that is what the universities are looking for. And so the values, the concepts, the life lessons, or these memories that you are on a lookout for, that you're observant about, it's these things that when you pull it back, you tie it back and you say, and this is why I want to study this. It's very powerful. It's very powerful. So yeah, it was very crucial for me to go into university.
So can I just ask a follow-up question? So were you admitted to a university and you decided to defer, or did you just decide to take this gap year and apply to schools for then the next academic year?
I was accepted into university, but that was when I wasn't in a good mental space. And so when I thought it through again, I realized that's not where I want to go. So I did reapply, and I'm going to somewhere different with you. Yeah.
Okay, very good. No, that's really helpful to hear. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks. Well, I think if obviously there's no one else to have questions for Chinwe at this time, but I know if you need to go, please go ahead. Well, we really appreciate you being here and sharing your experience. I think it's really invaluable to people who are interested in doing this, as well as people who have children that are interested in doing this, to talk to somebody that's done the thing. And so for Kelly and for anybody else watching this recording later, if you want to get in contact with Chinwe after this presentation, you have questions, you want to know more, her information is shared in the chat. And if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't see it, send us a message and we'll be sure to send it your way, as well as Chinwe has shared her referral code. So if you start an application, then you'll be able to use her referral code to get a discount on your program, which is even more exciting. So all good things. But thanks so much, Chinwe, for joining, and safe travels to wherever you're going after this.
Thank you. Going Taylor Swift.
Oh my gosh. Well, have the
Bye.
best time ever. Safe travels, Chinwe. It's
Thank
wonderful
you
to see you again.
Bye-bye.
That lucky girl. All right. Well, I guess we'll go back to the main part. Past the agenda is what we're going to be talking about next, is hearing from Ms. Jane Saroyan about, why should you do GAP in the first place?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's always great to actually lead with a student because they'll share the anecdotes to all of the data that I share. But and it sounds, Kelly, like you've already been doing your research and have perfectly spot on questions. And I want to come back to some of those as well. But I always like to start with making sure that people are working with a definition that we, feel like best really encapsulates the gap year. And this is a definition that we helped the Gap Year Association, which is sort of the national standard setting body of all things gap year here in the US, help them work through this process of getting their definition refined. And so an intentional period of time devoted to personal growth and exploration through experiential learning opportunities. And I absolutely love this definition because it, again, my perspective in this presentation tonight is that 30,000-foot view, because Chinwe wants Japan, and another student wants Spanish, and another student wants to work with wildlife, and someone else wants human rights, and someone has 3 months, and someone has 9 months, and someone has $1,000, and someone else has $40,000. So the gap year is vast. It's as vast as the students that exist that are pursuing it. And so, it's so easy to have assumptions about what a gap year is based on a distant relative, a neighbor, your friend's kid. They did a thing, thus we think that is equal to gap year. And I think that's why it's so important to start with this kind of definition that really, I think the most operative word in that entire definition is intentional. We're actually, and this isn't instead of anything. A gap year is not instead of college. It's not instead of trade school. It's not, it's a bridge year. It's that year or period of time of growth for a young adult to step away from what has generally been a treadmill, an academic treadmill with 3 years of a global pandemic thrown in there for this young population in particular. And they are emerging hungry for something else, connection, happiness, real world application for things they've been studying. And so when we remove the specifics from what one has heard of other people doing, then every single human could really fit themselves into this definition. It doesn't say where you are, what you're doing, how much you're spending. It's an intentional break devoted to growth that we generally gain through kind of experiential or hands-on learning opportunities. So that's sort of the starting point. The next phase and slide I'm going to head us to is where I have families then take the process and this 3-step process. And this is the order I would have students go in, starting with the why. That's the intention part. Why the gap year? As a parent of a high schooler who will soon be also looking at gap year versus college, I want my daughter to be able to answer it for both. If you want to go to college, great, but why? Why is it you think you want to go to college? If you want to take a gap year, fantastic, but why? And I always tell my clients there's no wrong answer. I think we're so used to being evaluated, and that the process, it's more about the product than the process now. It's about the performance. It's about the grade. And so the gap year is this kind of, and the process at least of considering it all takes us back to the idea of why do we learn? What makes us happy? What agency do I have in the next steps of my life? So if someone says I want to take a gap year because I'm academically burnt out, well, do we want to send an academically burnt out student to another 4 years of college? Or if they say I want to take a gap year because I want to become fluent in a second language, I mean, these are the kinds of aspirations I hear from young adults. And it's just as powerful as saying, I'd like to go to college because I think I want to study writing. Okay. But for some people, the format of a gap year, of exiting the 4 walls of a classroom to expand their learning through other ways, is really essential at this stage in life. So the why, I think, is just a wonderful place to start. And I encourage students to even come up with like what I call their elevator pitch. 2 sentences. Why do you want to take a gap year? Because sooner rather than later, you're going to have a parent, a college counselor, somebody in your life, an adult, who, when you say, I want to take a gap year, they're going to look at you and the first thing they're going to say is, why? And so how powerful to say, well, I'm glad you asked. I've really thought about this. I want to take a gap year because I'm really burnt out. I've taken 4 years of Spanish. I don't feel like I can speak it. I'd love to get fluent. And I might be interested in, being a vet. And I thought getting some experiences, hands-on experiences working with animals could be really neat. Now we have like a really informed young adult who any caring adult in their life is going to want to hear more about. So the why, and that's the intention piece. Then is the fun part of the brainstorm where I have students get out a piece of paper and do the, if you could do anything, and your interests, your skills, your goals. If you could go anywhere, if you could do anything, what would it be? This is a really important part for students to feel free to express themselves without limits. So I tell parents to, really respectfully and quietly leave the room. Don't micromanage the process. Don't say your father and I are not going to pay for you to go surfing, like leaning over the shoulder. Let them feel free. This is what students need right now. They need to feel a sense of agency and hope. And I can tell you, facilitating this process for students for almost 30 years now on their own, even if they write surfing on their brainstorm, they probably wrote things like, I want to become more independent and more confident and more mature. I want to make some wonderful friendships. I'd love to travel to Africa. They're going to put things that are very palatable and really in line with what you're hoping as well. But if out the gate we start telling them, you can't do that. We can't afford that. We're not going to pay for you to do that. It's really taking the wind out of their sails. And I think we can all agree as parents and as professionals that what students need right now is actually wind in their sails. So really encouraging this brainstorm and telling them, I want you to, like, don't worry about the money right now. Don't worry, just go for it. Because I think that's where we're going to see some real sparks of excitement. And all we need are 1 or 2 or 3. And I'll get to that if I have time at the end. But some students have 2 things on their list when they hand it to me. Some have 50. In the end, if I'm helping a young adult plan a full gap year, I'm encouraging them to come up with 2 or 3 core goals, core interests, and we'll see if we can plan a year that really focuses on those 3. I think a great gap year has both breadth and depth. Variety is the spice of life, and yet we would love students to really come away with some content, some skills. So if you were to mentally break the year up into seasons, a fall, a winter, a spring, that would be one kind of obvious or simple way to think about breaking up a gap year. With 3 kind of distinct areas of goals a student may have. Lastly, just rushing through it because I know I have limited time, is this idea of the how. So we've done the why, the what, and the where, and the how. And I write the starting prompt sentence as, for my well-being, I need ... And that's really tapping into where we do start to put some of those initial parameters. When I read that, for my well-being, I've had students write, I'm an athlete. I need to be near a gym. I will need to be literally working out every day. On my gap year for the fall semester, I'm really going to want to have access to my phone. There are some tech-free programs, I go to telehealth every week, and I really want to keep up. My mental health is on a great space, but I want to keep up with those appointments. For my well-being, I need this to be affordable. I'm paying for it myself. I only have $5,000. So this may be where budget issues come in, but this is where I'm really encouraging mental health, physical health, financial health. This is where we start to put on some of the more grounding pieces to the year. Okay, and let's just go to that one last slide, Adam. I know I put something. So just some resources. I put through a QR code up on the top right corner if that's the easiest way for anyone to want to just take a photo and open up our website later. You can, I have data and resources on our site, but additionally, I want to point out a few other things. The Gap Year Association, I have already mentioned, and I would highly recommend you check out their web page for data and programs. I think you'll see me there. You'll see CIEE. So this is kind of all things gap year, a wonderful resource with data, benefits, accredited programs, accredited consultants like myself. Depending on where families are, I mean, with a senior, you're really in it. For families watching this video later, freshmen, sophomore, juniors, starting to connect with programs. After doing like a sample of the worksheet I showed on the slide, answering some of those questions, that's going to start, you're basically applying filters. So if you were to put gap year in Google right now, you will get over 1 billion hits, right? So like any good research, we're putting filters on your why, your what, and your where, and those other parameters that you need to be healthy and successful. Those are your filters. And that's going to help take just that gap year search in Google into a more refined set of keywords. And that's what you're going for. And ultimately, you might start by just following programs, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Follow a few programs passively. If you're not ready to get inundated with emails in your inbox, you'll very quickly feel a part of the greater gap year space and community. There are giveaways, there are scholarships, there are students reporting live from the field. It's a great way to get a sense of programs. You'll see other free webinars. Similarly, like if you follow J2 Guides, you'll see scholarships we give away, webinar Wednesdays when we do free webinars, giveaways for our own services, highlighting students in the field. It's such a great way to get inspiration and feel connected. And lastly, I'm going to go to the top one. I heard, particularly because you asked the question, Kelly, about college, I actually have a bit of a different answer, which I think is always great in a panel. In large part, in fact, and I have sat on panels at conferences with admissions officers from Harvard, UNC, Skidmore, Colorado College, Duke University, and actually there's a very pro gap year agenda out there. They see these young adults step onto campus so much more confident, so much more mature, so much more capable, and so engaged in their academics that most colleges think that gap years are brilliant. The UCs are historically the schools in California that don't grant deferrals. I don't think it means they don't like gap years. It's just college is a business. It's a business, and they want students on campus paying full tuition. So there are some schools that would deny your request to defer, if you were admitted, and make you reapply. But I will tell you that's the minority. The vast majority, I work with about 100 clients a year, and almost all of them have applied to colleges, been accepted, and had their request for deferrals accepted. So I actually come from a vantage point where I see colleges looking incredibly highly upon the gap year. Of course, there's plenty more to say about that, but I will pause there for now because I'm sure that Adam has lots more to say, and I don't want to take up more time unless there's a Q&A. But I'll mute, and Adam, let me know where we go from here.
No, totally fine. You did great. Yeah, I think we have a good bit of time, so this is totally fine. I know we've already talked a lot about kind of what gap year is in general, and Jane did a really good job talking about, why studying abroad, why doing a gap year in the first place. There's so many reasons why it benefits students, and it's tangible to see them feeling refreshed after this, and just the light back into their eyes of like, oh my gosh, I did something that I actually enjoy without somebody, making me feel like I had to. And so I think those are some of the best things that you can think of in terms of takeaways and, results, key results of this program. I think Jane and Chinwe did a great job explaining, the results that come after that. And with CIEE's programs, there's a lot of different things that CIEE offers. We've been around for a really long time. Technically, as of right now, we're the oldest and largest study abroad program provider. And we've been around since 1947 when we sent students for our first programs on boats for college programs. Luckily now plane travel is way more common, so we can do that. And typically we'll send around 30,000 students every year on our study abroad programs, whether that's high school, gap, college, TEFL, summer, semester. There's so many different programs that CIEE's grown and offered throughout the years. But the cool thing is it all started with college age students wanting to do a study abroad program. And so we have a lot of different accolades. We've been around for a long time, consistently supporting students. And this specific group of students, this demographic of students is specifically what we started with and what we, specialize in. And every single program that CIEE offers, whether it's gap year abroad or if it's first year abroad, which I'll talk lightly over in the next slide, it's an opportunity to, engage with new people, new students, take classes or take, college courses with the first year abroad program at or near one of our CIEE study centers. So typically wherever your student is at or wherever you're at, if you're the student, if you're on a program with us, you're going to be within usually a 30 to 45-minute radius of the CIEE center. So if you need help, if you need program support, we specialize in that. And we also have that for you. In terms of what programs are specifically available to you as a high school student who is maybe 18 plus years old or will be 18 years old by the time you go on these programs, there's a couple different options that CIEE offers. Gap Year Abroad, as Jane mentioned, is one of our current programs we have available where students can take 15 to 20 hours a week of language courses. Like Chinwe said, typically on 3, 4, 5 hours a day of language studies is what you'll see. And then you're living with a host family for this program. This is a program that allows you to engage and be fully in culturally immersed immersion wise. So you're living with a family in the area that's been vetted and background checked to be able to experience what life is actually like. And whether they speak the language or not, like Chinwe said, they're excited to host you, and they're doing this for the reason of an intercultural experience. And so no matter where they come from or what they look like, they love hosting our students, and they're just super excited. And it's always great to hear stories of students enjoying that experience as well, not just the homestay saying it was great, but the students saying it was great. And the other option is first year abroad. This is a new program that CIEE is launching this fall 2024. It's our newest program, and it's our newest thing that is happening this year. We're ecstatic and stoked about it. And essentially what it is it's for students that are interested in studying abroad the first year of college. So not waiting until sophomore, junior, senior year, but they want to hit the ground running and get going, as well as they want to, keep in line with their college credits. So this program satisfies that requirement. In terms of classes you take, typically 3 to 4 courses are going to be offered, so around 12 to 13 credit hours per semester. And CIEE currently offers 14 different locations to take these programs at. The nice thing about these programs is all the classes are taught in English, so you don't have to learn math and Japanese, which would be very difficult. And so that's the biggest difference between these two programs in terms of, what's better, what's right. It's really about, what your student is looking for in terms of goals. Are they wanting to study a language? Are they wanting to learn a new language? Are they wanting to improve a new language? Or are they wanting to take specific college courses to stay on track for graduation? These two programs are specifically designed to be for the same age and area of person, but every student has a different goal post high school graduation. Some want to study abroad, or maybe both just want to go abroad in general, but they have different goals of what that may look like for them. In terms of where you could go, where you're going to be at, as you can tell, it's pretty much worldwide. We have 14 different locations for the first year abroad program, and then currently 6 for the GAP program. Anywhere you see an asterisk is first year abroad location specifics. So these are programs that you can take an entire semester or an academic year abroad. So if semester programs with CIEE, best way to explain them is they're typically 3-month programs, usually right at teetering around 80 to 90 days exactly. What this means for your student, and the reason we built it that way, was on purpose. So typically, if you're doing a semester program, for any of these programs, if you're a U.S. passport holder, it's very unlikely that you're going to need a visa unless you plan to stay beyond those 90 days. So that's the biggest difference between, how much time do you have, or how much time do you want to invest in a gap semester or a gap year abroad. In terms of academic year programs, these programs are ones where students are studying for both the fall and the spring. So they're typically doing double the amount of time in the same place, or maybe if they want to do 2 separate programs or combine a program, they can go to different locations within CIEE centers to take maybe 1 semester for a first year abroad, taking college classes in Prague, and then next they move to Copenhagen or Paris to London. This is a new option that's available to them as well. So it really depends on their goals and where they're wanting to go, but just know this is roughly where we have in terms of location availability, and it varies depending on which program that you're looking at. And in terms of like what languages you're going to be learning, it depends on the country that you're going to. So if you're doing a gap year abroad program with us, for this specifically, if you're going to go to Spain, you're learning Spanish. You're going to France, you're learning, these are the areas and locations that you're going to be learning. If you're going to Berlin, it's German, Italian, Rome. Arabic is in Morocco, Japanese, guess what? Japan. So these are the locations that are specifically targeting the languages. So not only are you going to be taking the target language in class 15 to 20 hours a week, usually Monday through Friday on average is what we'll see at a local language school in the area. So CIEE partners with third-party external language schools to place students in them. So what this means is your students are not only being surrounded by other CIEE students, so they're going to be able to make friends with maybe Americans like Chinwei has, but they're also going to be exposed to international students overall. So this means that these language schools not only accept our students, which the majority of applicants come from the United States. Chinwei is an amazing example of how CIEE is able to accept international students since she's based out of Malaysia. But this is a great opportunity to meet people from all over the world, not just from Japan, Morocco, Berlin, or any other place, but worldwide. So students are able to be surrounded not only by people that are like them, but people that are also very much not like them. And that is another way, to expand their worldview, get perspective on what life is like in different areas, not only the country that they're studying in, but even people that are traveling, have moved there, are going to college there, moved there for a job. The reasons of why people are doing these language classes can vary in so many different ways. And then obviously, as I mentioned before, they're getting full immersion with their homestay. So every day of the week for the GAP program specifically, they're going to be with their homestay. They're going to be learning about them. The homestay will be learning about the student, exchanging, having dinners, living life as a student, not like they're living in a hotel. So that means they're going to be an active part of the family. They're expected to play a key role, not just to be, a person that's there existing, but an active participant and member of the family. That's what homestays apply to do this for. And that's really the relationship that they want to have with you, your student, and anybody that's staying with them. They want to get to know you personally. They want you to feel like you are welcomed and wanted there. And so it's their goal to make you feel excited about this experience. And then also, when you're not studying languages, this is a great time to practice, with people you feel comfortable, safe, and confident around, who don't care if you might mess up the grammar just a little bit at the dinner table, because at the end of the day, you're trying and you're learning and you're growing. So these are the people that are the best go-tos in terms of support, in terms of practice, and in terms of just fun overall. Like Chinwe said, they want to take you to places. If they're going there, you are considered a member of the family. And so for these programs, for me, I'm big on deadlines. I like to make people aware of, okay, well, what's the timeline? If I'm going to make this decision, when do I want to go? How long do I want to go for? And also, when do I need to get it done by? So like colleges, they have decisions for priority dates. Ours align relatively similar on some. So as you can tell, the May 1, one of the scariest days of the year for an 18-year-old probably, but National Decision Day for college is typically for the first year abroad. For fall programs with a little maple leaf or spring, these are the dates that you'll see. In terms of what priority versus final means, is priority is essentially saying we would love for you to apply by this date. It will set you up for the most success because you have more time to get your pre-departure tasks available and completed, as well as applying earlier for some programs benefits you financially as well. So for some gap year programs, if you apply early, you might get a discount for that program. So I say it never hurts to be early. It might even benefit you. So for these programs, in terms of the final dates, this is the exact final date that on our end at CIEE, we can say, okay, after this day, we need to really this is when the last day that we can figure out, okay, we need a homestay, we need a placement at the school. This is the minimum amount of time that we need to make sure we can make this happen. So that way we can give you everything that you're applying for the program. So that's why we have these deadlines. Obviously, if there's extenuating circumstances, we are sometimes flexible. So if there's like oh my gosh, something happened, I didn't make the July 1 deadline, can you extend it by like a day or two? Just let us know, and we're happy to help. As enrollment coordinators, that's our job. And as I mentioned, it also benefits to apply early because for our first year abroad specifically, if anybody's watching this program later on and you're thinking of doing first year abroad, or you're not sure, applying early may even give you a free program. So this is a value of the entire program fee for the fall 24 semester. You can pick exactly where you want to go. And if you apply by a certain date, you get multiple entries. So the earlier you apply, as you can tell, the more entries you get, the later you apply, the less. So that's a little bit of even an incentive of, oh my gosh, it might happen. So just wanted to let you know that as well for any students that are watching later. All right, we made it to the end, and we're even early, which is cool. So this is the section where if y'all have any questions for Kelly, if you have any questions for us, you're welcome to ask anything that I know we covered a lot, but if there's anything specific you're like, I want to know more about, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jane and Adam. I have two questions, foremost, and they're probably more geared towards you, Adam. So the first one is, you definitely featured that slide where there were the different countries or program offerings. Is there ever a point where you fill up, like you only have so many families that are hosts and can take students? So is there a point where if my student was interested in England, and that gets filled, then you would maybe have to go to a second choice? How does that work?
I'm so glad you asked that, because that's something I forgot to mention. So typically the way it works is for the majority of the programs, we build them to have ample space to expect a large amount of applicants. So we're able to have a lot of students on each of these programs if needed. The flip side of that is if there are programs where we don't have many applications, I think is one of the more important things. So as much as we would love to send every single kid on all of these programs, the main thing for you as well for any student that's looking to apply, in terms of minimum numbers to operate, CIEE also has that as well. So for each program that we offer, we want to make sure we're sending an appropriate amount of students on it. So that way there's enough of a cohort to make sure that they're having a good experience altogether. Because as much fun as it would be to go to Morocco by yourself, that doesn't really sound enticing. So we want to make sure that we're providing students with the best experience possible. So that way they can meet new people, but as well as, make sure that it's worth their while as well, and that they get what they're paying for. In terms of capacity and other programs, in terms of like program interests, we also will ask that typically on the application. So I know for the first year abroad program, as well as GAP, what we're doing this year is asking typically for students to give us a top 3. So if they say, yeah, I want to go to Japan, but I'm also interested in Italy, and I'm also interested in, Argentina, we'll make sure to ask for your top 3 programs that you're interested in. That way, if, push comes to shove, if a program isn't able to run based off of numbers or enrollment, or maybe even an extenuating circumstance, like, I don't know, COVID or something crazy happening again, we have the ability to know, okay, well, this program at number 2 can run. Are you okay with that? Of course, you know, if there's a time where you're like, well, I'm Japan, ride or die. I'm not, you know, it's Japan or Japan only. We have students that are like that as well. And that's totally fine. And if you let us know that ahead of time, then that's going to be really helpful for us. So that way we can just go ahead and know, okay, well, you know, if this is going to work, then that's great. In terms of like, when will we know these things by? That's also why we have the deadlines, you know, is okay, by this date, we should know how many students we have for each program as their number 1 application. We know we can run XYZ programs. Unfortunately, no one applied for, or only one applied for, or maybe X amount applied for this program. It's not, you know, functional to run it. And it's not fair to the students to give them an experience that, you know, subpart of what we could provide them if we had a larger cohort. Great question, by the way. Thanks for that.
Okay, thank you. That was excellent answer too. My other question is, do you know for either program, either the first year abroad or the gap year abroad program, do you know if you're allowed to use your 529 college savings plan to pay for the fees for these programs, the tuition?
I know for first year abroad, yes. The biggest thing with first year abroad that I will tell students in terms of financial aid is it's a college program. So for first year abroad, the courses that you get, the college credit you get is from Dean College, located in Franklin, Massachusetts. It's a private liberal arts university. So the class you're taking, they're actual college classes. And when you finish, you get a college transcript. So it's not like, yeah, you get credit, but how? It's actually through an institution. So if you finish the first year abroad program and you want to stay with Dean College as a student, you can, because you're an accepted student there. If you want to transfer somewhere else, that's also fine as well. So for the first year abroad program, I know for a fact you can use 529 savings. You can also use FAFSA. You can use external outside scholarships. For the GAP program, I don't believe so at this time. It ultimately depends on your provider though, but typically for GAP programs, they're not something that maybe a 529 provider would see as eligible, but I think it really depends on what courses you might be taking. Jane, do you know anything specific about that? I'd imagine you probably get that question a lot.
I do, yeah. So, but that's what it is Dean College. It's an association. If a gap year program, and many gap year programs do have college affiliations, but yeah, I haven't had students who've done CIE gap try to use their 529. But for instance, if you were to do something like an Outward Bound program, they have an affiliation with a partner university. So you could actually gain credits on that gap semester and thus also use your 529. You know, it gets complicated because college credits also cost more, so the semester will cost more. And if a young adult has a college admission somewhere and is deferring, they are admitted as a freshman, not as a transfer student. So that admitting college doesn't want a gapper to earn a lot of credits on a gap year. So there's a few different layers here. What I tell families, the last thing I'll say about this is if you just have overfunded the 529, you know, or just want to use it, you certainly could also do a gap program where there is that college affiliation. Your child does take a class or two, and the classes are always really relevant. You know, it's language, it's culture, it's leadership, it's, you know, it's always really relevant and experiential. So it's not, I've never heard students say it's a burden. So you could always use your 529 to pay for it, but just not hand that transcript over to the admitted institution that your young adult is going to. So there's a few pieces of information to kind of find out, including talking to your financial advisor.
Right. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Thank you both. I don't have any other questions.
Cool. The 2 questions you have are really good. So I think they're worth like 10.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining. We really appreciate it. I know it was kind of, you know, a one person show, but I think it was still really informative, and hopefully you got something helpful out of it. And your student will hopefully maybe be interested in learning more, or, you know, figuring out what next steps might look like for them.
Yes. Thank you so much. I took lots of good notes while you were both talking. So thank you.
Well, great. Well, if you need anything else, this is all of our contact information. So if there's anything you need, you want to reach out to Jane, or you want to reach out to us at CIEE, we're happy to get you connected with the enrollment coordinator that works with Seattle. She's great. And so if there's anything we can provide at CIEE, happy to help. And if you would like to connect with Jane, highly encourage that as well. She's absolutely fantastic. And I hear from her rather often, which is great.